What's going on, guys? What would Vinny do? I got a great guest tonight. I'm real excited. Renee C. Hill, an experienced trial attorney, concentrated in criminal defense, having practiced for many years with the law office of Murray Richmond. Ms. Hill has tried over 100 cases, including several high-profile cases ranging from homicides to minor assaults. Some of her clientele include persons in the entertainment industry and radio personalities. Amongst friends, she is known as the Queen of the Bronx. She was named one of the top hottest new attorneys in the criminal justice area by the New York Post and appeared countless times as a guest commentator for Court TV. She's also appeared several times on the Nancy Grace Show. Ms. Hill served as the acting justice of the Village of Harriman Court from September 2008 to April 2015. In late 2011, Ms. Hill partnered with Stacey Richmond to form Richmond Hill and Associates, where they continue to fight for their clients' rights. Ms. Hill comes from a long line of achievers. Her maternal grandmother, Gloria Miller Corley, was the assistant personal director of United Nations, and her mother, Renee Bennett, was one of the original 27 children of the United Nations School in New York. Ms. Hill is admitted to practice in the Supreme Court of the United States District Courts for the Southern and Eastern Districts of New York. She is the past president of the Black Bar Association of Bronx County, a board member of the Bronx County Bar Association, the New York State Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and the New York Council of Defense Lawyers. She is also a member of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. Ms. Hill graduated with a Juris Doctorate from St. John's University School of Law in June 1992. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
That's an amazing bio, let me tell you. Very impressive, very impressive. So, we're gonna start from the beginning. We touched a little bit on the show, and I just want to know, like, so the Queen of the Bronx. First of all, I love that nickname. So, like I had Murray Richmond on, and I love his nickname. Don't worry about it. That's one of my favorite nicknames of all time. I like the Queen of the Bronx. I'm actually the Prince of the Bronx. I don't know. A lot of people don't know that, but I love your nickname. So, how'd you get that nickname? Do you know?
My friends and colleagues just kind of gave me that name when, after quite some time, they would see me. I'm always very bubbly, pretty much, smiling all the time when I walk in. I walk into the courtroom, and after a while, people get to know you. And so it just seemed like everybody would know me when I'm coming down the hallway. Someone is stopping me saying, hello, how are you? What's going on? I would walk in. They say, oh, Miss Hill, are you ready to call your case? Before I even sign it up, people are calling me. The court officers are signing up. They're calling my cases right away. They're like, oh, my gosh, she's like a queen. As soon as she walks in, they call her case, and that's it. And so it kind of took off from there.
I see it. You have that royal appearance too. I feel it too. And for people who can't see it, I feel it. So, Queen of the Bronx. So, were you born and raised in the Bronx? Obviously,
born and raised in the Bronx. Yes.
Which
I'm
part?
A Bronx girl. So, I grew up on Sedgwick Avenue for beginning years, and then I lived uptown on 213th Street. Then from 213th Street, I lived on 224th Street. Right off of Boston Road.
Okay.
Yeah. But,
what was the family dynamic like in the Bronx at that time?
Mom, stepdad, two brothers.
Okay.
And me. I am the middle child.
Okay.
Yeah. So a younger brother and an older brother.
Okay. So two boys and a girl. I'm the same thing, but I was the youngest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So growing up in the Bronx, and I mean, reading the bio, speaking about your mother and your grandma, those were some impressive things. So you were raised in it from an early age with the lawyer stuff?
Yeah, I mean, my mom always pushed me to just really be vocal. Okay. I was very shy as a child, and to the point where my mom would get annoyed with me. And she would always say, you have to speak up. You need to speak up for yourself. Don't be so shy.
Yeah. That's interesting, right? That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
At what age was that? Like really young, or
that
even
was young? And then even in, I'd say early high school, I was still pretty shy.
Okay.
Yeah, I was pretty shy, and probably all through high school I was pretty shy. And but I knew that I wanted to be an attorney. I didn't know what area of law I wanted to practice in, but I knew that I wanted to be
at a young age.
At a young age.
Okay.
And my mom says I told her this when I was 9, that I wanted to be a lawyer. I kind of remember that, but I'm not really sure. I just know that by the time I was in high school, I was like, yeah, I want to be a lawyer for sure.
So I know you said you're shy, but when you a lot of times when people say when you're going to be a lawyer, it's because you know how to debate things, right? You know how to,
Right.
did you have that gift when you were comfortable around people where you could argue and win arguments? Or not really?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that I did. I think I had to develop that.
Okay.
Because I was so shy. I really didn't like to insert myself into things. I wouldn't let people run all over me. I stood my ground, but when it came to actually being vocal and maybe just taking something head on and debating it, I would just kind of stand back. I was that person that listened more than I spoke.
Okay.
And so,
that's uncommon.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you listen, you learn. When you speak, you say when you're ready. A lot of people don't do that. People they don't listen, they wait to talk, right?
And they just jump right in. So me,
I see that in sales all the time. And sales is listening because you need to know the person's needs, right?
Right.
So it's similar with the lawyer, right? You need to listen.
Gotta listen.
Right.
So.
That's a good lesson right there for people. But what was the whole appeal? Were you like, I want to help people? Did you know it was criminal law?
I didn't know it was criminal law, and what was very interesting was that once I started law school, I was pretty adamant that criminal law was what I didn't want.
Okay.
That was really, really funny to me in the end because I love what I do now, and all I do is criminal defense. But in law school, I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I think I wanted to do entertainment law. I thought I wanted to do product liability. And I think I was just drawn to, companies like PepsiCo and just the bigger companies thinking that that's where I wanted to be. And then I did a couple of internships. I did an internship for EPA, and I did not like it at all, the Environmental Protection Agency. It was so boring. And then I did an internship in the district attorney's office. And I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. This is kind of interesting.
Really?
And that kind of really piqued my interest. And then I liked what I saw, and I said, maybe I will do some criminal law. And then I took my criminal procedure class, and I started to enjoy it even more. So then I decided, okay, maybe criminal law is where I want to be. But then I still didn't know if I wanted to be a prosecutor or a defense attorney. Not until I met Murray Richmond.
Okay.
When I met Murray, he said, come on, kid, I'll take you around with me for a little bit. And
Can I ask how old were you when that happened? Because that's interesting.
Yeah.
And was he already Don't Worry Murray?
He was already Don't Worry Murray. I met Murray right after law school, after I took the bar. I was waiting for my bar results to come in, and my mom was like, you got to get out there. You're sending out resumes, but nobody knows you. You don't have any experience. You got to get something. So she took me to meet a senator here in the Bronx. And I did some volunteer work in his office, and he said, I'm going to introduce you to a friend of mine. Don't worry, Murray. And so he introduced me to Murray, and Murray said, all right, I'll take you around. You can hang out with me for a little while. So I hung out with Murray for about 2 weeks and followed him around in court. And I had already done the internships in the DA's office and saw how the prosecutors worked. So now I hung out with Murray, and I see him, floating in and out of the courtroom, and he's like the mayor. And it was great, and I loved it.
Right.
So,
what you get from him is probably more knowledge than anything else. That right? That's something you can't find in a book, right?
Yeah.
On-the-job training, right?
He's been my mentor, and it's definitely on-the-job training with Murray. But once I went around with him for a little while, it was great, and I said, this is what I want to do. I love it. And then Murray offered me a job after taking me around with him for a couple of weeks. He said, if you want the job is yours. I'll make you into a lawyer. And he did. And interestingly enough, talking about hands-on, Murray and I worked together for 2 years. I second seated him on about 12 trials, most of them homicides. And then after that 2-year period, he said, you're trying this case. And it was a homicide. I tried my first murder case 2 years out of law school by myself. Nobody second seating me. All alone. I was petrified.
Sure.
And Murray said, you're ready. You second seated me for 10, 12 cases already. You can do this. I said, okay, but you can't come in the court.
Second seated is what? You're on the case, but he's the
lead attorney,
right.
And I'm there assisting him, going through the paperwork with him, the discovery.
But he's doing the
work. He's doing the cross-examining of the witnesses.
Right. You don't examine any witnesses when you're in second seat.
Correct. Sometimes you can.
You can?
Yeah, but I was still too new to the game, so I I didn't do any witnesses
Like a
during
Few
that
Good
time
Men
period.
when Demi Moore steps in the car. And she says,
Exactly.
I strenuously object. That messes
Yeah.
it up. You don't want to do that when you're in the second scene.
Exactly. You sort of fall back. So, but I ultimately tried my first case by myself 2 years out of law school.
And that's uncommon.
And it's very uncommon.
Okay.
And especially
that's a murder case.
A homicide.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I got an acquittal, and my
Nice.
head swelled.
Nice.
But you also,
that's when you became the queen. Write that down.
At that point, but it took away my fears of going to trial.
Right.
And from that point forward, it wasn't smooth sailing, but it was smooth.
So I was going to ask you before we jump, like, what were some of the early challenges? Like, was it law school or did you have challenges?
I did have challenges in law school because, growing up in the Bronx, growing up anywhere, you have your cliques, you have your friends that you hang out with. Some are good, some are bad.
Right.
Not everybody is, moving in the same direction. Right. And you have those who like to hang out and party all the time. Yeah. And I hung out a little bit. My mom was strict, but she wasn't that strict, but strict enough. And by the time I got to law school, I thought that I could really move the same way that I did when I was in college. College came fairly easy to me. I was working, I was still hanging out with my friends, and I was going to school, and my grades were fine.
That's
and
interesting
everything was
because
good.
I know people now who go to law school, and it's a lot of stress in there.
Right. Well, it is very stressful. So when I got into law school, I thought that it was going to be the same as college, and I thought that I could still hang out with my friends. I thought I could still work, and I had a very rude awakening that first semester. First grades came in, and I saw grades that I had never seen before. Right. And at that point, I had to cut all my friends off. I quit my job. Thankfully, I was still living at home.
Yeah, you had to go all in, right?
But I had to go all in.
That's it.
Yeah, so
you had to audit your circle. You got to audit your circle.
Audit the circle. And, ultimately, my mom would say to me, your true friends will be there when you're done.
That's it.
They'll understand. And so, all the partying and everything that you want to do now, just think about all that you will be able to do when you get over this hurdle. So just put that to the side for now. That's what I did.
Yeah, that's a great lesson. Mm-hmm. A lot of people feel like they're not being loyal in some way, but that's not what it is. You're just moving. You're progressing in life, and like you said, the people who are real to you are gonna respect that, right? And still be there. That. If they don't, they weren't supposed to be there anyway, right?
Exactly, because you have to make those sacrifices and know that in making those sacrifices, you're going to reap the benefits in the end. And so those who are meant to be there with you will be there. And I tell my daughter the same thing. My daughter's 23 now. She's pursuing her second master's degree.
Nice.
And she's doing great. And I just told her, your friends, your real friends will be there. Get your studies done, get it done now.
Okay. Yeah. So you take that next step, you kind of buckle down and you go all in. Yeah. Is there a moment when you realize, now I got this? Or was it that win in that case when you were like, there's definitely no turning back? Or you never had a thought of like, this is not for me? You're like,
I never had a thought that this is not for me.
Okay.
But there are different hurdles that you have to get over. And one of the things that you have to learn in this practice is that you can like your clients a whole lot, but you can't get too connected to your clients. You have to learn how to draw the line. I had a client, along with Murray, who was charged with murder. We had a lot of murder cases. But he was a young guy. He was married. He had 3 daughters. Really sweet person. We get to see the human side of individuals charged with these heinous crimes. And he really was a very nice person. And he was out on bail, which is kind of unheard of now. It's very hard to get bail on a murder case. But back then, we would get like $25,000 bail on a murder case. And that was a great bail, and the clients would make it. So
back
this
then,
client,
meaning...
right?
No, I'm just curious. Because I'm going to ask you, has things changed? So how many years ago?
So this would be in the early 90s.
Okay.
Early to late 90s.
So in the 90s, you used to be allowed to kill people and still chill.
I mean, you could
still go out. So maybe it changed for the better, right?
An act of social disapproval, and but you would get bail. So this particular client was out on bail, right. So I got to know him. I got to know his family, and I really liked him as a person. And not to drag it out, but we ultimately went to trial, and he was convicted. And the day he was convicted, he was remanded. They took him to jail. That night, I went home and I was destroyed. I was so upset. I couldn't believe he was in jail, and I was just like, oh my God, this is horrible. And it took me a couple of days to get over it. And I had to tell myself, if this is how you're going to react to every person who gets convicted, you're never going to make it in this business. Right. You cannot survive. You cannot be that emotionally attached. Yes, you need to care, but you can't be that emotionally attached because you have to move on. And once you learn that, you'll be better for it.
Right.
And so I learned.
But do you think that's any business, or just because you're dealing with such heavy, like you're dealing with or you think, because I think sometimes in sales, I mean, I'm not, I sell houses, and sometimes you think if you don't get the right price or the person's upset, I take it too, because you become friendly with the person. Right. And sometimes I try to feel the same way. I can't make it too personal, but I think most people, it's hard not to if you're.
It's hard not to, but you really, I mean, here I think it's a little different because you're dealing with people's liberty. You're dealing with people's freedom. And, some of these people are going away for the rest of their lives, depending on what it is that they're charged with and if they are convicted. So to a family member or someone that you are really emotionally attached to, that can be devastating.
Yeah, that's a heavy burden.
It's a very, very heavy burden. So you cannot allow yourself to become that attached. That is going to
affect the next one. Right.
Affect, in the next case.
Okay.
So, also along with that, for me, as long as I know that I've given my all, that I've prepared 100% and gone into the courtroom, and I can go home at the end of the day and say I did everything that I could have done, then no matter the outcome, I might be upset about the outcome if I don't like it, if it's a conviction, but I don't beat myself up because I know I did everything.
So that's a good segue into, is there some times when you realize the deck stacked against you, you sit down and what's the process? A person comes to you and they're like, I'm accused of murder. They got the knife. They got I confess to it. It's on video. Everything's stacked against you. And do you say, I'm not gonna take this, I'm not gonna win, or you take it? As long as that money, you take it. But going in that you probably won't win.
But you know what? It's not always about going to trial. It's not always about winning. Winning sometimes is not necessarily going to trial and beating the case at trial. Winning a lot of times, is getting that person an end result that is appropriate for the charge.
Okay.
So sometimes, if a client comes in, I had a client come in and tell me, I killed this person, I did it. I confessed to a bunch of people. I know I need to go in. I know I have to surrender. Get me the best deal you can get me.
Okay.
So a lot of times it's working out the case. Sometimes people are overcharged. And so you want to get the appropriate disposition for what they actually did and not what you're overcharging them for.
Right.
So ultimately, of course, protecting their rights, protecting their interests. So, if a person comes in and they know that they did something wrong and they don't want to go to trial or they shouldn't go to trial, if you can work out a disposition, that's what you're doing. So they're hiring you still, not necessarily to win a case for them at trial, but to get them
to make sure that what's supposed to happen was supposed to happen, and they don't get
so they don't get railroaded and they don't get 20 years for something that maybe they should serve 5.
Gotcha. So I gotta ask this question, and I asked Murray the same thing. So there's a part in the Bronx there where the kid says, "I did a good thing for a bad man," right? So you get somebody off that you think did something. It's like, how you said before, the burden, is there a burden to that too? And then God forbid they do something else to someone else, or you have to take the same approach, and you can't think about that.
You have to take the same approach, and my approach to that is as follows. It's not my job to render the verdict in the case. It's my job to protect my client's rights, to fight for my client as best as I can. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. If they come with everything they've got and they prove their case, if a jury convicts, that's what it is. But if they don't prove their case and the jury acquits my client, I haven't done anything wrong. Whether my client was actually guilty of the crime or not, the prosecution did not meet their burden. And our law says they have to meet that burden. And if they don't, they must find that person not guilty. So I am not the judge of the facts. The jurors are. The people of the state of New York who sit
So when
and
he gets
listen to
out
that
and then he
case.
goes kill somebody else, the jury messed up. You did
Hey,
it.
not even so much the jury, but the prosecution didn't have what they
No, I'm only
needed,
kidding.
and so but the jury
Yeah.
makes that decision.
Okay.
It's not my
I
decision
got
to
you.
make,
I
and
understand.
so
Totally, yeah.
whatever the verdict is, I I don't take it personally.
Okay.
Everyone has a role to play, and the jurors have that role.
Speaking of which, I've been to jury duty a few times. Like, there's some, unless I had a bad batch, there's some weird people making big decisions. Like, I sat through the whole thing,
Yeah.
and I'm like, you're not supposed to talk about it. I go home and I tell my, this dude's going away. He got caught he got caught. The cop had to buy money. He got caught with the stuff. Go back in. They let him go. And I'm just sitting there like. So you tell me, like, have you ever had something where you thought, like, he's going down and the opposite happened, or vice versa, where you thought this guy's innocent? And it's crazy, right?
Yeah. You never know what a jury is going to do. You never know what is going to spark a juror's interest and what they're really going to hold on to. And it's amazing sometimes. I used to talk to jurors a lot after a verdict, and then sometimes I'm like, I don't even want to talk to these jurors. I don't know what they were listening to. Sometimes you just get so annoyed with them.
Course.
But other times you do talk to them, and the things that they say, it's really amazing the things that they hold on to. I had a jury out in Queens on a DWI, and there was something very, very minor, and I just happened to bring it up in cross-examination of the officer about the timestamp that was on a video. And it really, really didn't have much to do with everything else that was going on in the case, but it was, some minor relevance. He was acquitted. I talked to the jurors after the case, and they were like, "And that video was so telling with the time." And
that's interesting, right?
Wow.
You didn't even think of how important that piece was.
But to them,
that's crazy.
It was super important.
That's cool.
So, you never know what a jury is thinking and what they're going to do. You can't interpret the notes that come out.
And I guess that's why you got to go over it with a fine-tooth comb, because you don't know what's going to be that little fact that's going to swing their opinion, right?
Right. You never know.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, speaking of that, do you have, like, an interesting case or maybe, like, a high-profile case that you worked that stands out that you remember, really?
Yeah, I have a few.
Are you allowed to speak on them?
I can speak on one high-profile case that I had that was interesting. It kind of hit all of the things that we've talked about so far, or most of them. I had a client who came in and told me that he killed his wife, and he had taken her body and dumped her body. When he first came to see me, he told me that she was missing, and he had reported her missing. But then about a week later, he came in and he said, "Renee, I need to talk to you." And he came in and he closed the door. When he closed the door, I had a feeling what he was getting ready to say. And then he said, "I did it." And I'm like, "He did what?" He's like, and he tells me what happened. It was a huge argument that, and he kind of snapped and he strangled her, he killed her. And it was really a very, very sad case because 3 years prior to that, there was a domestic incident that occurred between him and her, and she had him charged, and ultimately she dropped the charges, and the case was dismissed. And then 3 years later, they got into it again, and it resulted in her dying. So that case was a high-profile case. He was a police officer he had been a police officer. He had recently left NYPD, and he went into another profession. And he was working in the medical field at the time. And then this incident occurred, so he comes in and he tells me, that he did it, and he tells me where the body is. And so when he told me, I said, "So you're telling me this because you're going to surrender? Because otherwise, I don't know why you're here telling me this, like you're telling me this because you want me to help you work this out."
Right.
So he said yes, and he understood that, and we knew that we were going to have to surrender him. I reached out to the DA's office and the investigators, and I said, I'm going to bring him in. And I went to bring him in, but I wouldn't allow him to make a statement. And so I surrendered him to the precinct, and because he wouldn't make a statement, they didn't have enough evidence yet because they didn't have the body yet. And so we walked in, and they had to let him out. They released him from the precinct. We sat there for hours. I said, "He's not talking," and we left. And then ultimately, we were going to kind of bargain. "We'll tell you where the body is if you give me a manslaughter."
Right.
And before we had that opportunity, some kids found the body. riding their ATVs. And then there was media all over the place. And the next thing you know, they were bringing him back in. You know, they went and picked him up. They didn't allow me to surrender him. And we ultimately went to trial, which was crazy because all throughout the case I was asking for a manslaughter, and the ADA would not give it to me. As we got closer, we did hearings. And after the hearings, we fared kind of well in the hearings. I got a couple of things suppressed. And the ADA was like, all right, you want the manslaughter, I'll give you the manslaughter.
For our people listening, what's the difference to get someone manslaughter versus I know
Well, the difference is the amount of time.
Manslaughter saying it wasn't premeditated.
That it wasn't premeditated. You
Okay.
know. So, all right. So if you have manslaughter in the second degree, it's not an intentional murder. Manslaughter in the first degree is reckless. Manslaughter in the second degree is not a reckless crime, but.
In other words, they were fighting the next night. He didn't mean to do it. Versus someone saying, I'm going to kill this person and plotting it.
Murder in the second degree is you intended to do it. So we wanted a manslaughter. It was really something that happened. It was in the heat of the moment kind of thing.
That's what you said.
And that's what we had talked about. And there were text messages that had gone on back and forth between them to kind of show leading up
Building
to this,
it up,
what was happening.
Right.
And ultimately, they offered him manslaughter. And he refused to take it. So after I had said to him, you know, this is a manslaughter, this is what I'm asking for, and if we go to trial, this is what I'm asking the jury for.
Oh, so they gave you what you wanted.
They ultimately gave me what I wanted because
why?
I did so well in the hearings. He said, you did great. We're going to do great at trial. And, you know, because when they see certain things going in their favor, sometimes people, they forget what is really happening. They forget the big picture. And he just thought that we had done so well with the hearing that now we could just go all the way and do great at the trial. Despite me telling him, I'm going in front of a jury and I'm not asking the jury to acquit you completely. I'm just asking them to acquit you of the murder because I don't believe you intended to do this. I'm asking for a manslaughter. So we have what I'm asking for.
Right, we can't get any better.
It's not going to get any better.
It can only get worse.
Exactly. And if I go in front of a jury, this is what I'm asking you for. I can't say you didn't do it because we know you did it and you confessed to 5 people that you did it. And there's video. There was overwhelming amount of evidence here. And he just refused. He refused. And in the end, the jury came back and they found him guilty of the murder. And he was sentenced to 25 to life. And I told him, you know, it's very sad because when you hit year 13, which is when he would have been eligible for parole, had he taken manslaughter, I said, you're going to remember the conversation that you and I had when I begged you to take this plea, and you didn't take it. So, you know, he'll try to appeal, and if there are any appellate issues, someone else will view it, and they'll take a look at it. But
you have to ever worry about people, like when a verdict comes in, like something like that they blame you. Obviously, they bug out, or the families of the victims, like stuff like that, when you're recording, does that get weird sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes that gets weird. I had another situation where there were threats that were made that if the clients were acquitted, that they were going to come after us. Murray and I, it was one of the cases that Murray and I did together. It was a murder, and it was just 2 sisters that were accused of murder, and it was taken so seriously that the investigators in the district attorney's office came over to court and advised the court and Murray and myself that there were threats that had been made. And the girls were ultimately acquitted. And when they were acquitted, even before the verdict came in, like every night after court, we were in court late every day. We were escorted.
Well, the threats were made that if they were acquitted,
and they were coming for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we had to be escorted to our cars every day, and you know, just to make sure that we were safe. So we, you know, families get really riled up and they get annoyed with the attorneys and everybody else involved, and they kind of lash out sometimes. I haven't had that happen in quite some time now, but the murder cases are the ones where it can get really
I can
dicey.
see it. I mean, I watched like the high profile, like the one with Casey Anthony, and I'm like, I hate the dude that represented her. It's hard not to when you think somebody did something. It's not perfect. You're just like, you know what I mean? And you just get.
Now that case to me,
so tell me, I want to hear
those jurors. I said to myself when she was acquitted, those jurors really, really did their job. Because I'm sure that there were so many people on that jury that believed that she was guilty or felt that she was guilty, but they believed that the prosecutor just did not prove it. I mean, when the verdict was rendered, I watched that and I saw jurors that were crying. Tears were streaming down their face as they were reading the verdict.
Because they probably thinking they knew she did it.
Right.
And
but
so is that the same thing? You think that's the same thing with OJ? You think it's the same you think that?
Well, I don't think anybody was crying on that jury.
No, meaning that it was whose fault. It was just their fault. They didn't prove it. They didn't prove it without it, even though you know he might have. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, there may have been people on the jury that felt that he was guilty, but that the prosecution just did not prove it. And I commend jurors who feel that way, but stick to what it is and render the verdict that they believe is just.
But I guess, like, as someone, like, I watch her, like, How Do You Kill a Baby on the computer?
Right.
I would think that's.
Yeah, I mean, it's not okay.
I don't know. You know what I mean? And then they buy masking tape and then the car and all the weird stuff.
But you know what? Also, we weren't in the courtroom when the case was going on. We get the bits and pieces that the media shows us.
Like the white Bronco driver, like I'm gonna kill myself because I just killed my wife. But things like that kind of give it away.
But we don't see and hear everything that takes place in the courtroom, so we don't know what the jurors are hearing and what the jurors are seeing. And I've had cases also where the media has been in the courtroom every day, and then I go home and the next day I read what they've written, and I say, well, what courtroom were they sitting in? Because that didn't happen, or that. How they portrayed in the paper sometimes is quite different from what actually happens. So what the lay people on the outside are getting is not always what the jury is actually receiving in the courtroom. So when a jury comes back and renders a verdict based on what they saw and heard in the courtroom, it's sometimes hard to judge them as people as to what they did, because you don't know everything that they heard and saw. You don't know what the arguments were inside the jury room and what persuaded them to do what they did. But if someone comes back on a case of that magnitude, where it's, really tried in the media and they are guilty in the media, but the jury comes back and finds them not guilty, those jurors are really doing their job. They are holding the prosecution to their verdict.
Right. You think that, speaking of the media, I mean, wasn't that the first televised? You think that played a part in it, the camera? Does that change things when they let the cameras in the courtrooms and stuff like that, or not really?
No, I think it does change things I think it's worse for the defendant when the cameras are allowed in the courtroom, because the spotlight is on the prosecutor to make, an example of the person that's there. They don't want to appear weak in any way. So I think it makes it harder for a defendant or any celebrity that is on trial when the media is in the courtroom, because you can have a celebrity charged with DWI and you can have a regular person charged with DWI, but because it's a celebrity, they're going to go harder on them because they don't want to make a precedent that outsiders are going to see and then say, well, this person got this type of treatment and received this type of, situation because they are a celebrity.
But the flip side of it, the celebrity usually has money to get better, right?
Right, to get better representation.
And that's why you get off on something that someone else committed a lesser crime and they can't get off because they got a public, right?
Right, and so outsiders will think that it's because of the money that they paid their way out of the situation. And it's not really paying their way out, but you are paying for an attorney who's going to fight that much harder for you to get that result.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the money has a lot to do with it, right?
Money does have a lot to do with it in the representation that you receive. Absolutely.
So do you think that it's gotten better or worse since the days when we used to let murderers get out on bail? Like in the 90s.
Well, you know what? In the 90s, people were out on bail.
No, I don't think. But do you think has it gotten harder? Has it gotten easier? Do you think it's better? What have you noticed are the biggest changes that you're like?
The biggest changes that I've noticed are the clientele is not the same. When people got arrested in the 90s, they were kind of prepared for the long haul. They didn't whine as much. Okay. They knew what it was. Like, if they were involved in the situation, they knew what the risk was. and they knew there was a possibility.
So not only the kids are soft, like even the murderers are soft. Like the millennials, even when they kill people, they're like, they want to.
I gotta get out of here.
I'm busy. I gotta go to Starbucks. I can't go to jail 20 years.
Yeah, so
that's funny.
That's what I've noticed. There's definitely a change in the clientele. Really? The court system itself, of course, it's changed. People like to think that it's gotten better. Some things have gotten better and some things have gotten worse. Like with anything, I would imagine. So,
in sales and in real estate in general, technology has played a big part. And is that happening? So like people are buying like stuff on apps. Can that really?
Technology has played.
With evidence, with DNA and stuff like that, changed everything, right?
But social media has created huge problems. But technology and apps and Google have played a huge part and caused a lot of problems because now everybody thinks that they're a lawyer. You can just Google anything.
Right.
And so you'll have people coming in and say, well, did you file that motion for discovery? Or did you?
That's hysterical.
You were just arraigned 2 hours ago. Discovery,
that's funny.
But people think that they know. Yeah. And so that is a problem.
I say that now with social media. It can be great, but it can be dangerous. Because you can have someone who's never tried anything talking like they're like this, right? And then people believe them. The same thing in real estate. There's a guy talking and I'm like, you did one deal in like 6 years. What advice? You're not a life coach. You're not Tony Robbins. You're not Gary Vee. Like everybody, right? It's crazy.
It's true. It's true.
So it can be great, but it can be dangerous for that reason. Definitely. I tell people that all the time.
Definitely.
That's interesting. It did change everything.
It has. It's helped a lot. For the prosecutor, it helps when people don't understand what you put out on social media will come back to haunt you in so many ways. It's
even in that case, again, they showed her like partying while the baby was missing. They're like, you're not worried about it. It's crazy. Yeah.
And instant messages and just the pictures.
The phones. I watch all of that. I watch like the ID and the cold case stuff. Like it's the phone always getting the ping, right?
That's right. They know where you were. Ping. Yeah. Yeah, now they can tell. Oh, you say you were here? No, your phone puts you right there.
So do you think it's harder now to be a criminal attorney because of that stuff?
Really? You were going to say, is it harder to be a criminal?
It definitely is with all the cameras and all of that. I know that. You can't do anything anymore.
There's cameras everywhere. If they're not, the regular NYPD cameras, the friends have cameras. Everybody's got cameras. All these different websites. People are posting things.
So crime had to go down because of the cameras, right? People I would think.
No, it hasn't. People are not smart.
Really?
Yeah, people are not smart, and look at this horrible case with Junior.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was just thinking because of the camera. You see the whole thing.
The whole thing played out on camera.
So, but that. Obviously, that would have made it hard to defend the people who did it, right? The fact that they're caught on camera doing it, right?
Right. And so that case is just commencing now. They're in jury selection now on that case, and
so something like that. If they came to you to defend them, you would do it. Like, is there anything that you would walk away from ever?
That is the one case that I've talked to a lot of my friends about, a lot of my colleagues about, and I can say in my 27 years of practicing, that is the one case that I would not touch. If someone came to me, I would not touch that case because it is such a heinous and horrible, horrible crime that was committed on that child. There's no way I could do it. And I have colleagues that would do it for the money. They would do it, but
even the exposure, right? Because that's
the exposure. Right. But I wouldn't touch that.
I respect that. Yeah, and I think seeing it play out is also what makes it. Maybe if you didn't, because then you can't even say maybe they didn't. You know what I mean?
Right.
Seeing the way it was.
There are some individuals in that case, the outsiders, the ones who were not present, that they say maybe they ordered it. They're going to say they didn't order it.
Right.
Those maybe.
Right.
If one of those guys came and said, can you represent me on this? And they told me, I wasn't there.
Right.
I didn't order it. I didn't know what these guys were doing. That's different. I could represent that person.
Right.
I'm talking about the ones who were on
literally
scene,
pulled it out.
Literally
I'm with you.
hands-on.
Yeah.
I would not.
What do you think about a lot of people came down on the store owners, and I didn't understand that because I'm like thinking maybe they feared for their own lives.
I'm sure they feared for their own lives.
Right, and everybody said they should be arrested too.
Yeah, I didn't think that necessarily that they should be arrested, but I was upset with how they handled the situation as well. But I don't think it rises to the level of being criminal what the store owners did.
Right.
I'm sure they were
Cowardice,
fearful.
maybe. Right?
Yeah, cowardice, of course, fearful. Who knows what they endure in that neighborhood on a daily basis.
Right?
People coming in, maybe doing whatever to the store and them having to call the police for help or what have you. So I can't necessarily knock them for being afraid, but I feel like they could have stepped up a little bit more. Even made a phone call.
Right.
I don't even think they made a phone call.
Right.
And then maybe after the fact, when he comes back in and he's bloody and asking for help,
Right.
and it seemed from what we could see that they were just kind of shooing him away, like, oh, the hospital is down the road, go. That was wrong. I feel like, now where's your good Samaritan?
Yeah, help him.
Help him. Don't shoot him out.
Now
you got him. Lock the door. Call EMS.
Right.
Do something. So that was wrong. But I can't say it was criminal.
Right.
Yeah.
So are there, in different states, do you think do you talk to lawyers in different places where, I know like in real estate, my friend has properties in Houston where it's not as landlord friendly, and if someone doesn't pay, they get people out. Is there different laws where it's more for the criminal or against the criminal, or it's not really like that? You think it's basically the same all over?
I think some jurisdictions are harder on certain crimes than others.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely varies from state to state. Even as simple as a DWI. A DWI here in New York would be handled very differently than New Jersey.
Okay. Just meaning enforce stricter laws.
Stricter laws,
and
yeah.
Stricter
and penalties, the stricter penalties. So I feel in Jersey the penalties might be a little bit harsher, for certain things. So yeah, from state to state it would definitely vary.
Do you have any advice for any lawyers coming, like if someone thinking about doing it now, and as far as thinking of doing criminal, would you would get any advice or anything to look out for, or something? Just
look out for the shysters. look out for those that'll say I'm good for it. Represent me now. Get your money up front.
So how does that work? You gotta get your money up front.
Get your money up front. Make sure you have your retainer agreements. Try to keep your clients to a schedule of payment.
You are dealing with a criminal.
You are dealing with a criminal.
It's like when you meet someone through cheating, right? And then they cheat on you. You shouldn't be surprised, right?
But you have to let them know, listen, you're coming in here, you want my representation. There are certain things that I expect as well. So you need to put it in your retainer agreements that if you don't comply with the retainer agreements, I'm putting you on notice, I will withdraw from this case. And then you're going to have to retain someone else.
Okay.
So don't play with my time.
Right.
Don't play with my money. I won't play with your life.
Is that your main motivation? Is it? I know we work for money. Nobody does anything free, but there's some people that. What again? I'll bring up Murray. He said money was. Is that the same thing with you?
Money is always a great motivator because you like to make money so that you can do the things and enjoy life the way you want to enjoy life. But I honestly enjoy what I do. I honestly enjoy representing clients. I like helping people. I love how I feel when I'm in front of a jury representing my client. So as much as I might complain sometimes about, not wanting to be on trial right now, which some of my colleagues hear me say, I don't feel like being on trial right now. But once I start and I get into it, I love it.
It's fulfilling. There's satisfying moments.
Yeah.
Like when you get somebody that left your time in the family.
Yeah.
Like for me, that's what I say about real estate. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I had someone, I just sold their house, and like he hugged me. He's like, you set my life up for the, what I mean? That feels good.
Right.
And then to get paid for doing that, that's a great thing.
It's like
I love what I do, right? And to love what you do. Isn't that a lot of people in life don't have that?
Right.
Right? That's the secret to life because you're at work all the time, right?
People are miserable
because of that.
They get up every morning because they don't like
and
what
they're just working for a paycheck.
Right. I enjoy what I do. So it's not just the money. I'm not going to say it's not about
Of course.
money.
Yeah. That makes it even better.
That makes it even better. I enjoy the money that I earn, but I enjoy saving the lives that I've saved and putting people back on track to where they need to be so that they can move forward in life as well.
So do you have anything coming up? Like what's your future? Do you do like 5-year goals? Do you have something planned? What's your next step? Or you're kind of where you are? Do you have a plan to do something else?
I am thinking about things that I want to do. But criminal defense is what I'm going to be doing for quite some time. I don't see retirement in the near future at all because I do love what I do. I enjoy it and I think I do it well. My colleagues tell me I do, and my clients love me. So this is something that will be going on for quite some time. But, I may do something else as well, just to have another stream of income, just to have something else, going on. I tried the whole judgeship thing. I was an active justice for 7 years in the village of Harriman. And I enjoyed it, but my passion wasn't there. It definitely let me know that my passion is where I am right now as a criminal defense attorney. So that is what I enjoy the most at this time. And I'm going to keep on doing that until I decide to do something else.
Sounds good. I appreciate you being on. I want to thank you. Much continued success. It was my pleasure to meet you.
And my pleasure to be here.
Before we finish the show, I have 3 questions I ask my guests. And it's going to be, you're from the Bronx, so I'm not nervous about it. Okay. It's going to be, my thing growing up was playing basketball and rap music. So I'm going to ask you your favorite basketball player, your favorite rapper, and your favorite rap song or album. Okay. And it doesn't have to be now. It could be back in the day. Like, it doesn't have to be right now. So you're going to start with your favorite basketball player.
My favorite basketball player. I can give you, Kobe Bryant is my favorite basketball player.
Love it. Yeah.
And I
Black
am
Mamba, baby.
The Black Mamba, and I happen to be a Laker fan. Okay. So despite the fact that I'm born and raised in the Bronx,
so I'm a Celtic fan. So we got,
I am a Laker fan. I was raised a Laker girl, and the reason being is that my dad was actually friends with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Okay. When he was Lou Alcindor.
So I don't think he gets enough credit when people talk about the best and they bring up Jordan and Kobe. A lot of people don't mention Kareem.
He doesn't.
And he should be mentioned in that conversation. Some people do, but it's not as many as it should be.
Yeah, he is one of the greats, and he happens to be good friends with my dad before he was drafted to the Lakers. Okay. And they used to play basketball in Brooklyn in the parks. I was a twinkle in the eye and then born. And so it was a Laker household. Okay. And
but are you current, or this was back in the day? Do you follow them now?
Oh, I follow them now.
So what did you think about Magic? I didn't think he was that good at that. Sometimes players don't make good.
They don't make good management. Right. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, Magic.
It is what it is. I think Kobe would be good at that.
I would like to see Kobe in that role. I don't know if it will, come to fruition.
Do you like LeBron? And what do you think about that?
I was just having a conversation yesterday about LeBron.
Okay, I want to hear this.
And I'm being persuaded into liking LeBron. I like LeBron's game. Okay? He's an excellent ball player. But I didn't particularly care for him, but I will say, you know what? I have to take that back. I got to
tell you, I feel the same way. I liked his game, but I didn't like the whole I'm going to Miami with my time.
I didn't like that.
I think he doesn't have enough people. Mm-hmm. I think he has a lot of yes people around him when he makes dumb decisions. That's all. You know what I mean? He's a great player. There's no doubt about it. He's a great
player, but one thing that came up in conversation yesterday was think about him as a person. Think about the things that he's doing for his community and the way he gives back.
I heard he doesn't sign autographs for kids.
And really? Well,
because he wants it. Because he wants the autograph to be worth so much money. How much money do you need?
But if
I know the other stuff that you're talking about.
But if he is doing things for the community, if he is giving back to the community, if he is speaking out on all of the horrible things that are happening in our society, in our country, all the black men that are being killed, and the police brutality that still goes on, the racism that still goes on, and he uses his platform to speak out and speak up about it where certain people don't. I respect him for that, and I commend him for that. And so for that reason, I can say, yes, you know what? I do like LeBron in that.
But the one thing I could say about that and about the football and the kneeling and all of that stuff, and I know there's a lot of stuff going on and there's a lot of prejudice and there's a lot of this, but I feel like that's where sports took that away, and you have black and white teammates fighting for each other against others and all different races together, European, and to bring it to that was my escape from that. If I want to watch CNN, so you were doing your part by making it political. That's when it hurt me. I'm like, that's what I was getting. That's just my escape. I want to see Bird versus Magic. I don't want to start thinking about the bad stuff. Yeah. So they were doing their part. I just didn't like when they brought. But you can do that on your own time. And also the thing with me is, you could take a knee. Why don't you do something? Yeah. Like raise money, like what LeBron's doing, right? Like J.J. Watt raised how much money for Houston when they had this stuff? Do something. Yeah. You have the platform. We all know there's a problem. like do something about it, right?
Yeah. So that's why I say, I had to take a step back and think about LeBron again and think, okay, he is using his platform in that way.
But I just mean as a basketball player.
But as a basketball player, I didn't
you know
like
what they said about Kobe?
attitude.
You know what they said about Kobe? That LeBron, his focus was such. He didn't even have a house in LA because he didn't want to be distracted. He took helicopter. I didn't know.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And like LeBron is getting caught up in the lifestyle. He's going out to dinners and he's not really focused. And Kobe focused, took care of business. Then when he finished, now he's doing documentaries and whatever, and everything is just all in. And that's why Kobe's the man. All right, so you picked the Black Mamba. That's good. So now let's talk about hip hop.
And in hip hop,
your favorite rapper, or your favorite rap album or song, and it doesn't have to be the same. You can say my favorite rapper is this, and my favorite song is this for whatever reason.
Oh gosh, so many. There's just so many.
Try to guess who Murray picked. Try to guess who Murray picked, and why? And why?
Yeah, you know. Murray was gonna pick DMX.
Exactly.
And I love DMX, but before DMX, it was LL Cool J.
Yes.
And
so I got this satellite radio, Rocket Bell radio. I can't stop listening to it. I'm LL too. I remember as a kid. Through. I remember listening to while I'm bed. I wrote down the words.
Yes. So
LL, beautiful. Love it. Okay.
Yep,
how about favorite song or album?
Favorite song or album? That's a hard one too, but maybe that favorite song or album might be LL Cool J when he went against it was a battle rap.
Against Cannabis?
Against Cannabis.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that song too, and I can't think of the name. And it didn't get a lot of love, but I loved it. It didn't get a whole lot, but I loved it. Cannabis did second round knockout, and then he came.
And then LL came back again, and I was like, "Oh my God, that is fire!"
I listen to it all the time still, and I can't remember the name of it.
Yes, but I think that would probably be.
And he dissed Wyclef from the Fuji because he dissed all of them. Okay, that was a great song.
It was a great song. It was a great song. All of DMX, all of Ja Rule. I love my guys. Jay-Z. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I appreciate you once again. Thank you for stopping by. Much continued success.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.